Welcome inside episode 458 of the Locked On Senators podcast. I'm Ross Levitan on the outskirts of enemy territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba, alongside Brandon Pillar up in the Blue Mountains reacting to the least surprising news ever. No, not the NHLers pulling out of the Olympics officially as of this morning. No, we're talking about Sens super prospect Jake Sanderson, captain of the U.S. national junior team.
You love getting to see Jake Sanderson having a leadership role representing his country at the World Juniors. And you love a little holiday tradition, Ross, as we bring back best friend of the show, Tony Ferrari. He was with us last Christmas, so we had to get him back on the show with the holidays coming up and World Juniors coming up, maybe some upcoming draft talk, and lots of prospect talk with Tony Ferrari.
All that and more. This is the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.
Locked On Senators, your daily podcast on the Ottawa Senators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Today is Wednesday, December 22nd in Pilsy. Jake Sanderson just became the 7th Sens prospect to lead his team as captain at the World Juniors. Did you have any luck with that trivia we put up at Sens Central on Twitter?
Well, you guys know I'm terrible at trivia, so obviously I didn't get all of them, but I did get a couple, and one that always sticks out in my mind is Curtis Lazar. Like having a Sens prospect as the captain of Team Canada, that was a good feeling for sure.
A stacked team, too. That was with McDavid, Duclair, Domi,
Yeah.
Morrissey. There were so many guys to pick as captain of that team, and they ended up winning gold in Toronto. That was one of the best Team Canada's going. I've actually got the jersey in the frame right there. That was the year they wore that. Was it? Yeah, the 100th anniversary that of Team Canada. So,
Huge.
you know they had to have a big-time leader for that. But no, in all seriousness, he is a very memorable one. That trivia answer we'll save for the end of today's show after we bring on Tony Ferrari, Hockey News, Sports Illustrated. Is that good? Tony's great, and we love to get his takes on this show, but sometimes his takes go overboard, so we have to ask him. Told Sens fans to chill the F out. Guess he doesn't like the sickos taking over on the internet when the Sens get points in 6 of 8 games, rather.
Well, I mean, people were saying this is your best friend of the show calling out Sens fans, but you got to remember, your best friends are the ones that are going to call you out on your crap, right? Like, they're not going to be too worried to tiptoe around things. So Tony said, hey, I know these guys. I know they can handle a chirp and some rebuttals, so I'll let them have it. And hey, Sens fans, if I was another fan base, I'd probably think Sens fans are annoying too. But that's something, as a Sens fan, I wear with pride because we're loud, we're proud, we love our team, and we still do kind of suck, like Tony said. So we gotta try to pump ourselves up because no one else is pumping us up. So I don't regret what Sens fans are doing, and we'll give Tony a bit of a hard time here.
Yeah, we certainly will. Before we get to that, I do want to talk further about Jake Sanderson. Now it's the third straight year the Sens have had a captain at the World Juniors. Again, I'm not revealing the results until the end of the show, but there was really no other option. The assistant captains are Matty Beniers, Landon Slaggert, and Brock Faber. So you're looking at guys who, other than Matty Beniers definitely has leadership qualities. I'm not trying to knock these other guys, but Sanderson was Beniers' captain at the US and TDP. So you got to think just from that standpoint that leadership hierarchy was going to continue. Our good friend Brad Schlossman wrote that he's the 4th captain in the history of North Dakota. Sorry, the 4th player in the history of North Dakota to lead their team as captain at the World Juniors. I believe it's 2 Canadians and 1 American as it stands now. But this is just going to be a great opportunity to not only showcase himself for having offensive upside, as there'll be a certain scout in the building who isn't quite sure about that, but also with the NHL officially pulling out of the Olympics, no doubt they're going to ask Jake Sanderson. Now, of course, there's so many different variables here, whether or not he'll be able to attend or even want to for the 5-week quarantine, this or that, if things test positive. But what an opportunity to really cement himself with Team USA as the go-to guy.
Yeah, I mean, that would be definitely something cool to put on a resume and something that in a normal global climate you wouldn't have a chance to do. So that's definitely very cool. But I don't know, Ross. If I'm looking as a Sens fan and from a selfish developmental lens, I don't want him going to the Olympics. I'd rather him stay in North Dakota. I mean,
Have his milkshakes at 6 a.m.
yeah, exactly. Well, and this is a guy who made a decision to stay at college another year instead of going pro, right? So you got to think he also is leaning at getting as much college playing time as possible. And he's a big part of that North Dakota team as well, right? Like, sure, he wants to represent his country, but he doesn't want to leave his boys behind in the dust in a big season. So I think it's a cool, fun idea, but I don't think it's the most effective and smartest idea if he was to go to the Olympics. I'd rather him stay at North Dakota. And I mean, you're wearing a North Dakota sweater. I'm sure you can hop on that train too.
Of course, we're pulling up, if you're watching on YouTube, his season stats: 19 points in 15 games, the highest points per game for any defenseman in the last 20 years. And I'm talking about Adam Fox. I'm talking about Cale Makar. And the reason I bring up Cale Makar is that he was asked to go to the Olympics in 2018, and he said no because his sole focus was getting the Minutemen, University of Massachusetts,
that's a
as
great
far
example.
as they could go. So it seems like every turn he's following in Cale Makar's footsteps,
exactly, yeah.
Except for representing Canada, which Jake Sanderson would have had the opportunity to do, as he was raised in Calgary just as much. He actually played for Team Alberta growing up. So he decided that he was an American through and through. He told us on this show that the reason why was because he wanted to represent where he felt home was, and he was asked to go to the U.S. National Development Program. So great opportunity he couldn't say no to, but there's some Canadian blood in Jake Sanderson. Do you know his dad's from the Yukon, like way up north?
Whoa, I did not realize that. But the irony there, Ross, is as he's telling us how much of an American he feels like, there's a big old Canadian flag draped behind him because he's in Jacob Bernard Docker's dorm room at the time. So that was pretty funny.
Hey, JBD, another guy who wore a letter for Team Canada, not the captaincy. So if you're wondering if he's one of the 7, the answer is no. Same with Thomas Chabot. Lots of people guessed that at Sens Central. The answer is no, guy.
He was just an MVP, not
just an MVP. The only defenseman to ever win MVP. Could he do it again? Maybe. And just to correct myself, Jeff Sanderson, his dad is from Northwest Territories, not Yukon, but still way up north. All right, so great times if you're a Sens fan. 5 prospects at the World Juniors, 2 on Team USA, Jake Sanderson, Tyler Clevin on Team Canada. Oh, both guests on this show. Oh, on Team Canada, Ridley Gregg. Oh, wait, another guest of this show. So you can go back. All those interviews are available wherever you download your podcast and on YouTube. We've actually had Riddler on twice, an absolute beauty. The shit-eating grin this guy has when he's talking about getting in the corners and mucking up. He's an absolute beauty. And then the 2 on Team Finland, Roby Jarventi, who expects, I'm sure, to have a much better tournament than last year, and Levi Merilainen, who will be battling for playing time with Pittsburgh prospect Joel Blomqvist. So let's get in more to the tournament, Pilsy. And it's not quite 2022, but the NHL is on pause. So we will take a peek at Tony Ferrari's initial draft rankings for the upcoming 2022 NHL entry draft. Who's the most Sens player they have? Let's find out next. First, Pilsy, I'll hit a word from our friends at Primal Origin Oil. You got beard, then you got to get Primal. You heard that right. If you got beard, you have to get Primal. If you or someone you care about has a beard, it needs to get Primal. Maybe you're that guy who never considered the benefits of treating your beard with product. Well, Primal Origin Oils will stop the itch and make your beard look healthy and groomed. Their goal is to help others look good and live healthier lives through the use of natural oils. The products are free from harmful synthetic ingredients, and they have a low impact on our planet. Primal Origin Oils makes balms, oils, and whipped butter that are renowned as the best feel in beard products available. You have to see it for yourself, so check them out right now at primaloriginoils.com. You can learn more about their full line of beard care products and use the code LOCKEDON for a 20% discount at checkout. The combo kit makes a great holiday gift, and if you're shopping for yourself, you'll be glad you did. We know that every company claims to have the best, but Primal Origin Oils challenges you to compare their ingredients and feel in beard to other companies you've used. We promise you will see and feel the difference. Remember, the code LOCKEDON gets you 20% off at primaloriginoils.com. Use the code LOCKEDON at checkout for 20% off. It's primaloriginoils.com.
Ross, I've been telling the loyal listeners all about the holiday flavors at Built.com for Built Bar protein bars, and they've come out with yet another one. You got to check it out. It's from the Built Bites product line, so the smaller protein bars, and it's candy cane brownie bites. Check it out today. Great stocking stuffer. You can go to Built.com today, and since you're a loyal listener, we're going to hook you up with the promo code. Use the promo code LOCKED15, and you're going to get 15% off your next order. So get some stocking stuffers, get some protein bars that taste like candy bars, the candy cane brownie Built Bite bars at Built.com using promo code LOCK15, 15% off your next order. It's Built Bar, the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar.
All right, here he is from the Hockey News and Sports Illustrated. It's best friend of the show, Tony Ferrari. All right, we now welcome a very special guest back to Locked On Senators. We considered him a best friend of the show, but now he's throwing stones at Sens fans. It's Tony Ferrari, draft expert and World Junior preview-ist, but also shit disturber. What's going on, buddy?
Oh, I felt like, you know what? I was best friend of the show for too long. I had to come and be the villain for a little bit. Like, it's just a ton of fun. Like, I love it.
No, Tony, this is what we talked about on the show before. You still have the best friend of the show title because everyone knows your best friends are the ones that will call you out on your crap. You know, they're not going to be tiptoeing around being like, ooh, I don't want to offend anyone. They're going to tell it like it is. And apart from some of your statements, which actually I have the statements right here, Ross. Should I read them so that everyone's on the same page here?
Get the official statement out. Let's go.
Stretch
All
it out.
right. This is Tony Ferrari, guys. All right. I'm just going to say it. You know I love you, Sens fans. I do. You're fun and spunky and support your team to no end. All true right there. If you're asking me, all true.
Just a sweetheart I am.
Now back to Tony Ferrari. Y'all need to chill the F out. The rebuild is not done. You don't have a single player in Matthews/Marner's hemisphere. You still kind of suck. Fun though. End quote.
Now, I want to say one thing. I should have amended one thing. I should have included Marner. I should have put McKinnon because that was the guy that really got me triggered. Because the Matthews Marner stuff, obviously, everyone like Senators fans are going to rip on that stuff because it's the Leafs and it's just a great rivalry. It makes sense.
Yeah, that's triggering.
But and so for me, I was like, you know, it is what it is. Like they're just going to make fun. It's just the rivalry. But the one that got me was when I started seeing people go, Drake Batherson's as good or better than Nathan McKinnon. And I'm like, okay, guys, you know what? There's no rivalry there. There's no reason for that one. Like, I get it, but like, calm down. Like, come on.
Now, how's this for, because you mentioned those two names, and I think it was 2 days ago on the show, or was it recently? We were talking about Drake Batherson. Now, we didn't say he's as good as McKinnon, but we used to say he was just like, the gratuity. What did he say? He got like a free pass in to work out with McKinnon, Marchand, and Crosby. Yeah. And now we're saying he's among them as an NHLer.
He's no longer associated with them. He is a part of that group.
Yeah, it's like, oh, he's so lucky to be allowed to train with these guys. No, he's a legit NHLer himself.
No, and I think I agree with you there. Like, I think Drake Batherson's exceeded expectations for everybody. Like, I don't think anybody expected him to be as good as he is. And he's having an absolutely fantastic season. Like, there's nothing against Drake Batherson. That's the other thing. Like, I like to poke fun. And obviously, like I said to you before the show, like, if I'm going to tweet something out like that, if Senators fans don't come at me, I'm going to be a little disappointed with you because I know how crazy you guys are. But no, there's people that tweet stuff out like that and then take it personally when Senators fans are like, oh, Tony, you're the worst ball draft analyst. And I'm like, yeah, no, I get it. Like, yeah, no, I agree with you. But no, it's all in good fun. At the end of the day, it Sens fans getting hyped up because they won 4 out of 5 at the time, I think it was, and they're getting jacked. And Drake Batherson, you look at the scoring list, and he's above a lot of the guys like Matthews and McKinnon and stuff. So take the roses, but of course I got to call you out a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt. And then they'll just come back and say that Colin White was a part of 2 more playoff series wins than Austin Matthews, and they both came into the NHL the same year.
And I have nothing to deny it or nothing to fight with that about because it's absolutely true.
Exactly. And I don't think Colin White will have as many goals in his career as Austin Matthews has in one season at his best. Maybe but not. That's a story for another day. We'll see where Colin White's playing next year, but he's a first-round pick. We talked about Drake Batherson, 4th-round pick. The draft is such a crapshoot, which makes your job very difficult. How hard was this year putting together your top 64 versus in years past?
It was easier than last year. Last year.
Guys.
Yeah. Last year was kind of shitty because we had the OHL not playing. The QMJHL was up and down. At this point last year, the WHL wasn't playing at all yet. So last year it was like, man, like all of Canada, any player in Canada, you couldn't really see. So you're going off their D-1 tape. Whereas this year we're getting everyone. We're starting to see everyone play, and it's been nice. And it's unfortunate is not being able to get to every rink. I haven't been to Plymouth to watch the NTTV play like I normally do and everything, but man, it's been nice seeing everyone play. And at the end of the day, I'm probably wrong. Like that's the thing with these draft rankings. Everyone that does them is wholeheartedly wrong because the best NHL teams hit 30%. And I'm not an NHL team, so I'm probably going to hit less than 30%. As much as cocky as I want to pretend to be, at the end of the day, this is a much like baseball. If you're hitting 30%, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Sens fans understand that. They just like to poke a little fun when they found holes in systems and projections and stuff. So that's fair. Now, you mentioned how difficult it was the last year to do your analysis and rankings and stuff. What's a different approach that you've learned throughout that challenge? Like, what's something that like normally you get to see all these guys, you get to go to the rink, so you're able to construct your rankings in a certain way. But after last year, you had to be like, okay, I don't have those same luxuries. I need to focus more on using these tools to rank someone, or these tools to figure out where someone will be projected. Like, what's changed for you?
I think the biggest thing is, as a guy that's located in Windsor, Ontario, like I'm not super close to every team in the world, so I can't get to Europe, obviously. Like, especially last year, like Dauber wasn't paying for me to fly anywhere or drive anywhere. Like everything was on my own dime. So the big thing for me was going even more into video than I had in the past. And luckily I have some video programs that I'm able to use and get video on every prospect I want and every player I want, whether they're playing US high school or in Sweden or right here in my neck of the woods in Ontario. Like I'm able to see all that stuff. So being able to go right into the video, using things that using the programs I have to just watch their shifts of a game. So I don't have to watch 50 minutes of a game where European prospects only playing 10 minutes and there isn't any other prospects in that game to watch. So I'm wasting a bunch of time. It's been nice to be able to use tools like that. But I think the big thing for me was really incorporating interviews last year. I did a bunch of the game tape interviews last year and they were good, but they've improved this year. I will say that. Like I watched back on some of the ones from last year and I'm like, oh, Tony, you're terrible at this. What are you doing, bud? And this year it's much improved. And I have the Hockey News to thank for that because they've been able to let me get access to a few more higher end players. I have a video with Connor Geeky coming out this week. Nice. Matthew Savoy's coming out. There's a bunch of guys. Frank Nazar's already been out.
You can't come say hi in Winnipeg and just see these guys up close. Let's go.
I know, hey, right? Just fly out there. I've been trying to get the Hockey News to pay for it, but they're a little tight with money right now in the pandemic too. So, no, the big thing is doing the interviews, incorporating that stuff. I interviewed Seamus Casey from the national under 18 team in the US, and he was one of the best interviews I've had this year because we were watching some video and going over some stuff like I do in every one of my videos, and he's going over a play where he ends up getting an assist on it. And it was a really nice play, zone exit, retrieved the puck from his own net, rushed up the ice in transition. Really nice play. And 2 seconds into the clip, he goes, you know what? I could have done this better. I should have seen that outlet there and used that player. And we could have been up the ice much more efficiently, even though he scored or he got the assist on the play. It's like seeing things like that, watching the player process their own game and everything. That's been a big advantage for me the last couple of years, and especially this year as I've done more of them. So I think doing that, getting the player's point of view on their own game and seeing how they see things, that's been the biggest advantage for me last year.
And if you want to go check out Game Tape with Tony, you can do that at thehockeynews.com. And some of his older ones are available on YouTube as well. All right, getting back to your rankings, Tony, top 64. Which guy did you spend the most time deliberating in terms of where you were going to place him?
Shane Wright. No, I'm just kidding. Shane Wright was number one. That was pretty easy. The guy I think I spent the most time deliberating on was a pair, and they're related together. And it's Brad Lambert and Joakim Kamel, the two Finns at the top of most boards. And if you look at my rankings, Joakim Kamel is below Brad Lambert, which is not a popular opinion at this point in the year. And a lot in Brad Lambert,
same Joakim team, Kamel, we should say.
Yeah, same team, everything. And Joakim Kamel is at number 9 on my list, whereas a lot of lists he's at number 2, 3, 4. And the big reason for that for me is I go back to a couple years ago, and it was a learning experience for me. And I don't want to say that I was right, but it was a moment of clarity that I had where I looked at Lucas Raymond and I look at Alexander Holtz and I go, okay, Lucas Raymond's driving play. He's doing everything you want to see on the ice. He's doing everything you want except getting on the score sheet. And Alexander Holtz is putting the puck in the net at an unreal rate. He's scoring like crazy. He's putting up points with Yurgard, and he's doing a lot of good things. But there's holes in his game outside of that. In the offensive zone, sure, I can give him the advantage, but everywhere else, he's not really pushing the pace of play. He's not really being the driver. He's not being that guy. He's a hired gun. In this year, you're looking at those two guys, and Brad Lambert and Joakim Kemell, and you see, I see the very much similar thing where Joakim Kemell is this hired gun. Prior to his injury, he was shooting 30%. And now that he's back from his injury, he's played a few games, his shooting percentage dropped all the way to 11.4. And that's only after a few games. And that's because he's just not getting the same luck he was getting earlier in the year. And the shooting talent's obviously ridiculous. Like, he's one of the best shooters, if not the best shooter in the draft class. But what is he doing outside of that? And now that he's not scoring, his game looks a lot more empty than it was. And Brad Lambert, despite the still not finding the score sheet with an overly consistent basis, he's still one of the best transition players, if not the best transition player in the draft. He has some of the best tools in the draft overall, whether it's his hands, his feet, his mind. Like, there's some questions with his decision making in the offensive zone, and I think that comes down to the fact that growing up, this kid was the best player on the ice every time he played. So now he's playing against men, and he's learning, okay, like, I'm not the best player on the ice every time. How do I execute my play at that level? And that's something he's learning, and that's something Lucas Raymond learned. And so right now I have Lambert ahead. Is that definitive? No, the year's got tons of time left. So it's a long way, but right now I kind of have those two in the same group at 7 and 9 and Lambert ahead, but there's tons of time, and I'm interested to see where those two kind of go.
Yeah, and I like that approach, Tony, because I think a lot of people maybe focus too much on the analytics and stuff like that. But and like you said, doing the interviews with players, like, you got to layer back the person here too, and how they work in situations and what kind of character they have and stuff like that. So, speaking of which, the Ottawa Senators are known to draft based on character, based on friendships, based on connections, all these kinds of things. So, having said that, who are some of the guys going into this draft that you can see the Senators really targeting on? Because as we well know, the Sens often zig when others are zagging, and some choices may seem obvious, but they've got a different mindset or principle of reasoning why they go for these guys. So who do you really target as a Sens guy in this draft?
Well, I think the first one that kind of pops off to me at the top of my rankings is Logan Cooley. He's a guy that I haven't interviewed yet, but I've heard really, really good things about his mindset. He's playing on the U.S. World Junior team as a draft eligible, the only draft eligible on that team that's probably going to play. Dylan Silverstein, the goalie's there, but he's probably not going to get in net much during the tournament. So Logan Cooley's probably going to get a pretty good chance to play, especially with a guy like Thomas Bordeleau going out. So it's going to be interesting, but he's a guy that sticks out to me because he plays a really good two-way game, a solid game. Does he have that number one upside? I don't know, but is he the number two? Probably. I think he's a pretty safe number two center. So I think he's a guy that the Senators could look at. Go down the list a little bit. Ivan Miroshnichenko, I know the Sens don't love drafting Russians, but this is a guy that has a bunch of tools and kind of does everything you want to see. He's got size, got the physicality. He's another guy that I think is a hired gun. He's a guy that can rip the puck, and the Sens seem to love those guys. So I think I could see him being a guy like that. And I mean, the Sens love size. So a guy like David Jiricek, he's kind of a dick in front of the net. He's a defenseman that has some dynamism to his game, but he's also a defenseman that's been suspended a few times because he loves hitting dudes as hard as he possibly can. And sometimes it's with his stick, right? So it's he's a fun guy too. But yeah, I think there's a lot of bigger, taller guys in this draft. Connor Geekie sticks out as well, a guy that I have interviewed who's a 6'4" center. Plays a pretty solid defensive game. That's been a big improvement for him this year. So I could see one of those guys going there. But if I had to choose two, I'm probably going with Connor Geekie and Logan Cooley.
Yeah, I've gotten a couple live looks at Connor Geekie in Winnipeg this year, and he is huge on the ice. Like and especially like Savoy is uber talented. I'd put him ahead just like you did. But putting those two side by side, like Geekie towers over him. He's like 6'4" already, the brother of Seattle Kraken forward Morgan Geekie. Now, I noticed that 1, 2, 3. You've got 6 USHL guys in the top 31. Is that common? I know 2019 was a huge year for them. Could this rival that?
I think you could rival that in terms of quantity, but maybe not quite quality. I think the top end of that group was just ridiculous. You had guys like Jack Hughes and Trevor Zegras and everything. And I don't know if there's quite
you left out Spencer Knight after he got an 8 spot put up by the Sens. Fair.
I know. Spencer Knight, just a bum. No,
AHL goalie at best.
That's why they send him down. But no, I think like that US team was ridiculous back in 2019, and they're a pretty ridiculous team this year too. Like the quality is, and I had 6 in the top 30, 32, but there could have easily been a few more. Rucker McGroarty didn't make the cut, and he's a guy that a lot of people have in the first round. So
and
it's
not
like
that Jack Hughes too, although Northeastern, but another US kid.
Yeah, he played for the national under team last year. So like there's a ton of talent on that group, and with just like you said, guys with ties to that team. So like I said, they maybe don't have the quality of that elite top guy like a Jack Hughes and even maybe a Trevor Zegras, but man, like they have a ton of talent this year.
How about the overall quality of this draft class? I know it's still early, but where would you compare it to the similar length along the road with the last 3-4 years?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good draft class. It's better than last year. I think last year was a little bit lacking, and we all kind of seen it as the run up to the draft kind of felt a little dull at times and everything. But I think this year it's pretty similar to that 2019 year. Like I said, you have Shane Wright, who's going to be a really, really good player, and his offensive game hasn't quite come around in the OHL yet, but he started to see it recently. And you see videos from camp with the Team Canada, and you're like, yeah, there's a reason this kid's the number 1 center as a draft eligible. So like, there's no doubt this kid's going to be really, really good. And he's got a great 2-way game as well. So you're not going to worry about him. Like if he winds up being Patrice Bergeron light, I don't think you're complaining at all as a first overall pick. So this year's draft class got a ton of talent. I think the dynamism, and the big thing with this year's draft class, I think, is much like 2019, is you go, okay, some of these guys have pretty low floors, and you're like, I don't know if they're going to make it, but if they do, holy hell, like this could be a really good group.
Yeah, well, that's exciting to hear coming up towards the new year in World Juniors, and then we got the draft. So lots of excitement for young hockey talent. Now, last question about the draft, Tony, and then we're going to move on to World Juniors. I'm looking at your list here, and 5 of the top 5 players are all forward. So not kind of different than last year where you had defensemen going number 1. And the Ottawa Senators, the last couple seasons, the last couple drafts have been looking for that centerman, but now that Tim Stützle looks like he might be a better center than a left winger, is this a situation where, for once, the Ottawa Senators shouldn't be so focused on getting a true centerman and maybe go for a more true elite winger? Or do you still believe that they should be looking for, if they get a high draft pick like we're talking about, that they should capitalize on all these centermen here?
Well, I think the big thing is almost any of these centermen could be wingers outside of Shane Wright, I think, is the one guy that you're like, I'm not going to try to even move him from the middle. But the other thing is, like, if you draft, say, a Logan Cooley or a Matthew Savoy, and those are the guys that end up being the better center, I don't think it's too bad of an option to toss Tim Stützle back on the wing, right? Like, you have that option still. So I think that you don't necessarily need to nail yourself down, but if you're sitting there looking and you're like, okay, do I go with a Frank Nazar? Do I go with a Brad Lambert? Both guys can play center, but I think both guys would be really elite wingers as well. So I think you have no problem drafting those guys. And as you mentioned, the defensemen are a little lower on my list this year. And I think that's just a development of, you look at a lot of the top 10 defensemen over the last 15 years, and sometimes the best defensemen are drafted in that 10 to 15, 10 to 20 range. So I don't know if it's necessarily an indictment or something I kind of have a partial bias that keeps them out of the top 5. But a guy like Seamus Casey, if he goes in the top 5, even a Simon Nemec, I'm not going to complain if one of those guys go in the top 5, because kind of for me, outside of that top 2 with Savoy and Wright, anyone from 3 to 12, 13, 14 even could probably go in that top 5, and I wouldn't be overly blown away by it.
So this might be the hardest question I ask all day. Outside of 1-2, which you say is pretty locked in. So in that 3 to 14 range, who's your favorite prospect to watch?
Frank Nazar.
Yeah.
I love this kid. Like he's higher on my list than almost everyone else's. And that's something I tend to have I have a guy or two I do that with every year. And Frank Nazar is that guy for me. He was originally above Logan Cooley even on my rankings, but because Logan Cooley got the World Junior spot, I gave him the edge but in reality,
you just didn't want to take the heat. We know, Tony.
Yeah. I mean, having him at 4, I got enough heat from certain people on my DMs. So it wasn't that, but no, honestly, like I even wrote in the blurbs I had where those two guys are 3A and 3B for me, because Frank Nazar plays such a dynamic game. He pushes the pace so much. He pressures on the puck carrier so much in the offensive zone and the neutral zone. Like, this kid has every tool you want. And it's kind of similar to that Kamel Brad Lambert situation where I'm looking at Nazar and Cooley and I'm like, Nazar's tools are for the most part better across the board. But Logan Cooley does play that safer, a little bit more projectable NHL game. So Does Nazar have a higher ceiling? I'd say yes, but does Cooley have a higher floor? Yeah, and that's probably kind of why he's the one on the world junior team and not Nazar.
We'll be excited to see how this trend continues as we inch closer and closer to draft day, which is July 8th, July 9th, around there, early July, which I can't wait to get back to the June drafts, but that's a story for another day. You can check out his full rankings. It's pinned on his Twitter at the Tony Ferrari, but we got to get to a little World Junior talk. And before we do, quick word from our friends at betonline.ag, the number one sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network, and for great reason as well. Why wouldn't you jump on the BetOnline ship when they're giving you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit? Bingo, bango, bongo. You put in $100. That's 50 free play dollars that you can either follow Pilsy on his parlay and just donate it right back to the site, or you can make up your own mind and make some money. Why wouldn't you? And you can even put in $200 and boom, $100 right in your account. You get what I'm saying? 50% welcome bonus with the promo code Locked On. That's promo code Locked On for a 50% welcome bonus at betonline.ag for all your gambling needs. So don't sit on the sidelines anymore. Get into the action, and don't forget the promo code Locked On to receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. It's BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. All right, Tony. We're excited for the World Juniors. Why wouldn't we be, as Team Canada looks locked and loaded to make up for a gold medal defeat last year to Jake Sanderson, Tyler Clevin, and the United States. No Trevor Zegras to get in the way this year, though, when you're looking at the top end talent. So just for people who are getting the first preview, Pool A, you've got Canada, Finland, Germany, Czechia, which I'm still getting used to, and Austria. Group B sees the United States, Russia, Sweden, Slovakia, and Switzerland. On first glance, feels like Canada escaped the group of death. Would you say that's fair, Tony?
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. I think you look at their group, and Finland's always a tough out, and Germany's a feisty team, but the Germany's missing kind of their top guys from the last couple of years, and in Stützle and Seider. So they're probably not going to be as quite the level of quality they have been the last couple of years. And then in the other group, you look at the team that's going to be the feisty one there, and it's Slovakia. So I think Group B really is the one that's going to be a battle every game, except for the bottom end there. But it's going to be those top three teams, and then that feisty fourth.
Now, obviously, Sens fans are mostly Canadians, so we're cheering for the red and white. But there are two very notable Sens prospects on the red, white, and blue, and one of them captaining the team in Jake Sanderson. How big of a deal is it, Tony, for a guy like Jake Sanderson to kind of be given a big leadership role here as he heads probably from World Juniors back to UND, and then when UND season is over, he's going to go pro? How big of a kind of boost is this for his stock?
Well, I think for us and for the team and for everyone else, it's a huge deal. I think you look at Jake Sanderson getting the C on his chest, and it's something that he's routinely done in his time with USA Hockey and everywhere he's gone. For Jake Sanderson, I think it's just another day, another dollar. Like it's just the regular thing for him. He probably expected to see it and that's not to say he's a cocky kid by any means. I think you guys have talked to him. I've talked to him. He's not that kid at all, but this is a kid that's been the captain of almost every team he's been on. He's been a leader on every team he's been on, and he's been one of the best defensemen on every team he's been on. So I expected it. I think you guys probably expected it. I think Team USA's coaching staff expected it going in. So for him, it's just another day.
My favorite takes were people saying Matty Beniers should wear the C, when Beniers says himself he learned a lot of his leadership from Jake Sanderson. You were on record saying that Jake Sanderson could be a guy who wears a letter for the Sens down the road, so I'm sure you're not surprised either. Now, what's the rest of his team looking like? Is this a team that looks poised to defend their title?
On the back end, yes. I think the back end of this team is probably the most fun back end of any group in the tournament. I think with guys like Scott Morrow, Jack Peart, even Tyler Clevin, who is just the funnest guy in Sens Twitter, K-Train. Like there's a lot of talent. Yeah, exactly, right? Just a lot of guys on this back end that are really good, and they have experience with guys like Tyler Clevin and Jake Sanderson there. I think Scott Morrow brings a really dynamic factor. Brock Faber's that steadying presence that no one talks about, but this kid's a ridiculous talent. He's going to be a 10, 15-year pro NHLer in no time, I think. So I think there's a lot of talent on this back end. Where they kind of lose steam a little bit is in goal and up front. I think Drew Commesso is going to be their starter. They don't really have a challenger to him at this point. Dylan Silverstein's a draft-eligible young kid. Caden Mbereko is a really good player, but I don't think he's the guy that takes over the reins as a starter. So I think you look at the forward group. Matty Beniers, I love. You guys know I love him. He was my number one ranked player last year on the board. Matt Coronado is going to be a really good scorer. You look down the list, Sasha Pashajov, Landon Slager, like they have guys, but you're not really looking at a team that has a Jack Hughes, a Trevor Zegras. You look at Canada's roster, they don't have a Mason McTavish, a Shane Wright, those guys. So they're going to have to score by committee, but I think they have the guys to do it. Like they have guys that are going to be up and down the lineup. Like I said, Matthew Coronado might not play on the first line. Ty Smolenic is a dynamic presence. What is he going to do? Could he pop off? And then Matty Beniers, I think, is going to be the guy that leads the way up front, but he's not necessarily known for being that dynamic offensive presence. So they're going to be a workman-like group, but competing for a medal is going to be tough, I think, with some of these groups in the rest of the group and even in versus Canada.
So before we move on from the United States, you said it yourself, forward, not necessarily the bright spot of this team. So what would you say to Sens fans that were a little surprised that their 10th overall pick, Tyler Boucher, didn't even get a sniff at camp?
Nice things sometime. I don't know. I don't know what to say, because Tyler Boucher probably didn't deserve to be on this team, but this team also isn't that great up front either. Could he have taken a spot from a guy lower in the lineup, like a Dominic James, a Tanner Dickinson? Probably, but I'm not completely shocked he was left off the group.
All right, so that's enough USA talk, I think, for a couple of Canadian guys on a podcast here. We can move on.
The way I was going to word it, I know you want to ask about Ridley Gregg. Who's more likely to get suspended in this tournament, Tyler Clevin or Ridley Gregg?
Oh, it's got to be Ridley.
Yeah, Ridley Gregg, 100%.
Because Ridley will do it in a creative way we didn't see coming. Like the K-Train, if that were to happen, hopefully it doesn't. We know how that would happen. But Ridley, it's something new every day. And that's what I want to get to is Ridley Gregg. It seems like he's really cemented himself on that third line. What kind of... a third line role on an international stage is kind of an awkward spot to be in. What kind of role do you think he's going to be playing, and how efficient do you think he'll be in that role?
I think he's going to be good, because that's what Ridley Gregg does. Is he loves that third line role. I think that's where he's going to play when he gets to the Sens. I think that's where he's best at kind of playing that role, even though he plays higher in the lineup in the WHL. Like, he's a guy that loves to get under team's skin and loves to just do, like you said, find a creative way to find a suspension on his list. So it's going to be fun to see him do it, because what's he going to do this year? Is he going to cross-check a guy into the boards for his first shift of the tournament? Is he going to RKO a guy like Randy Orton? Like, what's he going to do?
First guy to take his skate off and try to hit someone with it, Happy Gilmore style.
Yeah, like, is he going to take his bucket off and whip it at a guy? Like, who knows? Like, this guy's fun. He's going to find some creative way to get suspended if he does.
Tony Ferrari compares Ridley Gregg to Nate McKinnon. That's the headline of this show. Just so
there we go.
Like us. Exactly.
Yeah. It's not Drake Batherson that's better than Nate McKinnon. It's Ridley Gregg.
Ridley Gregg, the Riddler, who some outlets said was an awful pick at 28. Pilsy and I were 10 rows up on that move he pulled before getting suspended in his preseason game. He's got skill. He certainly has skill. It's just a matter of harnessing that and making it the best he can. But I think that he's the kind of guy a coaching staff's going to love. Dave Cameron likes his old school hockey. He's the head coach, former Sens head coach, actually, but head coach with Team Canada. So we'll see how he uses him, if it's in like a Pajot style role, from thinking back to when Cameron was the head coach during the Hamburglar run. But it'll be fun to see. At least the Sens prospect back on Team Canada. First time since JBD, 2 years ago, I think, for JBD. Exactly. So we missed out last year. So we needed that back in a big way. I want to ask you quickly about Roby Jarventi, because I know you liked him as a player. His World Juniors last year was awful. I think he'd be the first to tell you that. I was almost surprised they brought him back. I know we saw that with some players where they don't play well and then they're off the team the next year. But what do you expect to see from him? He's one of the only guys here in this tournament that's played consistent pro hockey in the AHL.
I don't know what to expect from him, because he's a guy that flashes for a little while and then disappears for a little while. He's a guy that has the talent to be a real difference maker at a tournament like this, especially as a goal scorer. But is he going to do it? Like, that's the big question, because he goes through these spurts. He's one of the streakiest guys in the last couple of years that I look at in terms of being an offensive player. And has he had an amazing year at the AHL level? Not really, but he hasn't had a bad year either. So what Robbie Jarventi are we going to get? Are we going to get the guy that's going to come in, play against a bunch of kids and show that he's been playing against men for the last couple of years? Or is he going to be the Robbie Jarventi that's a little passive and not really involved in the play? Because there's a big difference between a guy that could have 2 points at this tournament or a guy that could have 12.
Yeah, he's consistently inconsistent. That's the whole thing. So we'll see how that goes for him. We're cheering for him. And I want to get final question from you, Tony. Thanks so much for joining us. As always, best friend of the show status still upheld, in my opinion. Now, can we get a prediction for you? Just so that when you make your prediction, I can copy it and then blame you when it goes wrong. That's kind of what I'm doing here. So what is your prediction for gold medal team in World Juniors?
All right. So I have Sweden taking the gold over Canada in the gold medal game.
Whoa.
I think Jesper Wallstedt goes, you know what, Sebastian Cossa, I should have been the top goalie taken. I've been on that. That's my matchup I've been looking for the entire tournament. I can't wait for it to happen. I think what Wallstedt goes, you know what, I should have been taken higher than you, and he outduels him in a really fun game. I think that'd be a great game. And then I think the Finns, the feisty Finns, find a way to the bronze medal again. Like they just find a way to the medal all the time. Do they beat Russia? Do they beat the United States? I don't know who gets there. I think the United States is going to have a down year. They don't really have the goalie. They don't have the forward punch. In Russia, it doesn't have a defenseman that anyone really cares about, to be honest. So like, that's just what Russia does. I think Russia goes as far as Michkov and Askarov take them, but how much are you going to be able to rely on a 16-year-old to take you very far? As great as Michkov is, I think he could be one of the highest scorers at this tournament, but he can't do it all himself.
I feel like we've been watching Askarov at the World Juniors for 25 years. It's been a long time.
Yeah, when his name was on the roster again, I'm like, oh yeah, he's still eligible. And honestly, I think that's the big thing with him is you go back to the last couple of years where everyone's like, oh, this guy isn't ready and this guy isn't good.
You better be now.
Well, the thing is, like those last 2 years, we don't normally see a 17 or 18-year-old goalie take the starting reins for a team like Russia, especially like a powerhouse team. So now this year, I think is going to be the big year for him. And I could see him going on a run, but like I said, that defensive group is not great. So he's going to be much like last year, facing a ton of high danger chances.
Final question for me, Tony. Again, appreciate you joining us. Everyone go follow him, the Tony Ferrari on Twitter. Still our favorite bald hockey analyst. Now, Tony, you mentioned goalies, and this is a great place to end because you have Finland finishing third. Will it be Joel Blomqvist or will it be Levi Merilainen in goal when they go to that bronze medal?
I say Joel Blomqvist because I've been on his train for a little while, but Levi Merilainen has been amazing the last year and a half. So it could easily be him. I think you'll see them both in the round robin, and whoever plays better, they go with the hot hand going into the elimination games. Nice.
We're excited for that as well, being a goalie friendly show, of course. All right, Tony, appreciate you taking some time for us today. Enjoy the tournament. We're going to be following along with you and expect some angry emails from Pilsy if you're wrong on your predictions, but really appreciate you taking some time and look forward to doing this again down the road.
Yeah. Cheers, boys. Always fun.
Stick taps to Tony for joining us. Really appreciate him taking the time. Great guy, great insight onto the World Juniors and upcoming NHL draft. Pilsy, we got more to get to tomorrow, including a list to Santa, where we're going to have to write what we would need if we're just a little kid hoping for better for our local hockey team.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully Santa's got room on his sleigh for all our wishes because there's a bunch of them if you're a Sens fan that you're hoping to find under your tree.
But for now, 5 prospects at the World Juniors will have to do the trick. I know you've been waiting. You've been clamoring. Who are the former Senators prospects who have already been captain at the World Juniors? Pilsy, you named me Curtis Lazar. That was the only one you got?
No, that was the most memorable one.
Okay.
I remember Lassie Thompson because of that picture. Was it him and Pinto that were getting into it?
Getting into it, for sure.
Yep. And this one I only remember because it's so obscure, and that's Andreas Englund.
Yes.
That is very random that he ended up being the captain of a Swedish team. And I think those are the only ones I got.
Tackling, if I say that, will you get another one?
Christian Jaros?
Yes, Christian Jaros. The same year, Ottawa had Jaros and Englund, both as captains in 2016. You're missing a very easy one, a guy who's been on this show. Come on.
Oh, Tim Stützle.
Thank you. Thank you. So that's the way this is put together in 3 years in a row. This year, you have Jake Sanderson. Last year, Tim Stützle and Lassie Thompson in 2020. So that's a pretty nice track record. So you've got a lot of them right now. I think most people got those. We had a lot of people throw in Mika Zibanejad. He wore an A. We had people throw Erik Karlsson. He wore an A. Victor Hedman, I believe, was the captain of that team that was in Ottawa the year of the Jordan Eberle. The one that nobody was getting, and I understand because he never played for the Senators, but he was a very high pick. Brian Berard in 1996. He ended up getting traded 2 weeks after he wore the C as a Sens prospect at the World Junior. So Brian Berard was the answer to that. But then we had somebody wrote in here that Brad Larson was a captain of Team Canada and a Sens prospect at the time. So I looked it up because I was confused. I was like, wait, what? I don't get it. So shout out to @BFG Gordy, who wrote in saying Brad Larson in 1997. I looked him up, and he was drafted in the 3rd round by Ottawa in 95. But then he wasn't signed. And after captaining Team Canada as a Sens prospect, so Gordy's right, then he went back in the draft and was selected by Colorado that summer. Wow. So, hey, you got to count it. So there's actually 8 here, but that's great. And it's just a long line of leadership. Now, again, you've got some who pan out and some who are Andreas Englund and Christian Yaro. So it's a mixed bag, but it is still a great honor to be the captain with your team's crest right on your chest. So, hey, we're just looking forward to some World Juniors. We're going to give our predictions for the tournament tomorrow, the final show before World Juniors get underway. No show Friday this week. We'll be back on Monday, but we'll also be back tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Wherever you download your podcast, please like and subscribe on YouTube. It goes a long way. And tell your friends. It's the holiday spirit. You can give them a subscription to Locked On Senders for absolutely free. You just have to steal their phone, go on YouTube, and hit subscribe. But for today, we say goodbye. Hope you enjoyed our chat with Tony Ferrari. For Brandon Pillar, I'm Ross Levitan. This has been the Locked On Senators podcast, your team every day.